Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Uncivil Law. I hope you're having a great day, and we're here to do a little Karen Reed wrap-up stream with my new guest. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the channel? Who are you?
Hi everybody. Hi Kurt. Thanks for having me here. I'm Dr. Ania Rynarzewska, but I really go by Dr. Ania because my last name is complicated. And I am an assistant professor in marketing at Georgia College and State University. So that's what I do every day.
Very good. And so what's your professional credentials? That's always a good place to start. Ooh, exciting.
Oh, yes.
What's your CV?
Ooh, I don't think we have all that time right now because the court CV can
Give me the basics.
Okay, the basics is, well, before actually the CV started, I came here to play for Florida State University as a tennis player, and that's how I was earning all my degrees. So I have undergrad in public relations, I think, master's in integrated marketing and management communication, and then PhD in mass comm with marketing and statistics. So methodology, if you ever need a Dauber hearing, I'm right there for you. Yeah, so
Right.
PhD is the ultimate one.
Very good. PhD in mathematics, huh?
No, marketing and statistics.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, that's all very interesting stuff. And so, what has been your professional interests? As this is your interest in this case is relating to your professorship, or is it related to things beyond that?
No, it's definitely related to being a professor. So I do all sorts of studies, which, to a naked eye, so to speak, may seem unrelated, but I really study online communities. And so social media, online communities, the impact it can have on institutions and services. I mean, good services, anything. And if you think about, in this case, the legal system and everything around it, that's a public service. So it is of my interest because what people say online may affect how people perceive the institution, or what institution does may affect people online, right? So there is this sort of intersection. That's why it captured my interest. Initially, I wasn't actually interested in the case based on what I saw in the media. I was like, well, there's a video of it, right? So what's interesting about it? And then I was like, well, where's the video? And so I got interested, and people were talking about it. So that really got me interested.
That's interesting because I've have similar ideas, and I've thought about maybe trying to put together like a law review on trying to compare the differences or lack thereof on how society has dealt with trials and hoopla relating to trials over periods of time. Because I have this idea that things are not really any fundamentally different, and arguably things in the past could arguably be viewed as worse for the phenomena that people think that social media is related to. So, for example, if we roll back the clock about 500 years, give or take, and we're somewhere in Europe, right? People are poor. No one has any money. There's nothing to do. No one can travel anywhere because they can't afford to travel, and transportation hasn't been invented. They can't read because, well, the printing press is still busy being invented. And even the printing press existed, they won't be literate for a couple hundred years anyway. And so, well, what do people do? Right? Well, they go to church. Sometimes they do theater, and of course, trials, because trials are free. And so, and what is there to talk about? Right? There's the trial, right? And so that's the hoopla of the thing. And we have the town criers and the whole thing. With the whole thing, it becomes this town. And because that's all there's to talk about, because we can't get news from anywhere else, because well, the book hasn't been invented yet, and no one can travel to spread the news manually. It's like, this is all there is, right? So what social media gives, it also takes away. What social media gives is it allows people to talk, but it allows them to talk about everything. And so it makes it actually really hard to focus on any one thing. So while there's a lot more information, there's a lot more information.
Right.
So I think in some ways it would be actually interesting to try to do some sort of cross comparison and to see, to the degree that the watcher influences what's watched. The Hawthorne effect, basically, idea. The observer changes the observed. Is that problem worse? Is it better? Is it the same? Is society exactly the same? Are we just the same people and we have this conceit somehow technology makes us different? So I think that's an interesting subject worthy of exploration.
Yeah, I definitely think it's very interesting. And I actually look at the notion of what happens when you feel like you're in majority opinion versus what happens when you're in minority opinion, right? How you feel about it. So, in this case, there was a lot of voices on both sides actually, and I hope to capture both sides to better just understand. But yes, I think social media, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad about social media, but it does provide voice, right? So if you really go back, we were told things. It was very much one way, right? Especially
Hmm.
when you think back, when the book and the media was already there. But the government would send certain messages. Then there would have been a radio, maybe TV, and everything, newspapers, of course, and everything was one way, right?
Hmm.
So it was this sort of other institution, whether government or the media, telling you things. Now with social media, we can actually tell back, push back, discuss, see it for ourselves, right? Maybe rise up, maybe not. So I am very interested in this whole dynamic because I do like two-way communication. I like be able to hear what other people say and what they like and what they don't like, right? So I think this is really something that is important. We have to hear it, and that will change how people view things because we all impact each other. So the dynamics is really pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, basically, since we invented broadcast media, which, as the name says, is when you can broadcast as
Hmm.
opposed to narrowcast, right? So
Right.
when we first were inventing, that the radio, first inventing the telephone, first inventing the television, right? The ability to communicate, like those resources were limited, and even like with the printing press, right? The legal right to use the printing press is one thing, but the ability to do it technically is the same thing. So like the influence of money, this is also a thing that I think about sometimes too, like the influence of money on elections or anything, right?
Hmm.
Money has always been a factor because how many papers can I print is contributed by money. Like
Hmm.
how can I distribute them is contributed by money. Like everyone can stand on the street corner and talk for free, but if you want to, oh, I've lost her already. She, she's not. Go ahead.
I'm here. Just Alexa was playing really loud. I
That's
had to
fine.
shut her up.
No, it's fine. So like, but yeah, but what the new revolution is now that we all have the ability to broadcast. And so that is the new revolution. Broadcast is no longer limited by money.
Hmm.
And so uh, that makes well what's interesting about that is also that we no longer have like the single like authoritative source. Even if the authoritative source was bad or not, it's like we were all working from common information. So whether that was the clergy,
Hmm.
when, priests, were presenting the message, or it's the government, or it was, media in terms of radio or television. It's like we all had that common thing that was the thing we were all commenting against. And
Hmm.
now the media has become much more fractured. And how that is an influence is interesting, at least to much more dynamic effects. A very interesting thing for academic study, a very rich academic study, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and a lot of people complain about this sort of segmentation of media and different audiences, but I do like it. I actually tell people, my students, the people are my students. I tell my student to expose
Students are
themselves.
people too. Students are in
Very
fact
right, very
people.
right. Yes. Um, I tell them to expose themselves to various media, right? Because the
Hmm.
framing of a message is different. And so, really,
Oh
to
yeah.
understand something, it's nice to expose yourself to a variety of viewpoints that, maybe help you better understand another person or a concept, which sometimes can be frustrating. I get it. I mean, I do roll my eyes sometimes so hard my head hurts, but you know, I think we're all entitled to having an opinion, but I think it's important that we do have those conversations and we do see different viewpoints. I think it really is important, which is why I like content creators too, right? Because you don't have the middleman or woman telling you what to say. You choose it, but also the audience makes the choice for you in a way because they contribute to it, which is sort of a
Sure.
co-creation of the entire what are we all interested in and what we want to hear about. So I think it's
Which
cool.
can lead to, in we can lead into, in as that dynamic can get flipped to audience capture. That the creator becomes a prisoner of their own audience.
Hmm.
That can be a real factor. There's a lot of interesting things relating to that. So yeah, very,
I,
very good. So
I'm seeing
what
the
is
comment on the side and I'm trying to stay focused, but the comments are very interesting. I don't know how you can actually really look at the camera and seeing the comments. They're really fascinating. Hi,
it,
everybody.
be,
Hi, chat.
it becomes a challenge. It's something you get used to. That implies that I've gotten used to it, which I'm not sure is necessarily fair, but whatever. Yeah, but it can be a challenge. So you're interested in online communities and how
Hmm.
online communities form. Um, and that's also interesting. Do you look at that from a view of social contagion?
Uh, some. So this is not really the theory I typically study, but I look at more of a socialization. I hate this word because I can't say it. From a socialization perspective, how we socialize to an idea. So what you say and some
Mm,
other people say shape how I think about it and feel about it. So that's part of it. But also the idea of exposing yourself to other information. So like the trials are so interesting, right? I'm just going to interject myself real quick
please.
because we have the community talking, we have the content creators talking, but then you also have the trial yourself, right? Which you can evaluate yourself without the intermediary. Although we could argue that the judges are in a way intermediary because they do, you know, allow certain things to be seen by others versus not. But we have the motions that we can listen to, right? So we know what is being blocked, we as public or people who watch the trial, not so much the jury. So I like the idea of studying the trials because we have the community, we have the content creators, and then we have the trials themselves, which provide us with information that doesn't necessarily has to be evaluated by somebody else, but we can evaluate it ourselves. So I can evaluate it myself, you can evaluate it, the community
Sure.
can evaluate, and we can talk about it, argue or not, whatever.
Very good. So, what is your interest in Karen Reed, or I suppose, how did you select Karen Reed as a particular topic of interest? Is it just because it's very, very popular in the zeitgeist and it kind of suggested itself for that reason, or was there some more nerdy academic reason that perhaps it got your attention?
So you might be surprised, but I actually was following a number of you a while back with the Deb V. Heard. And so I do have a paper on Deb V. Heard and content creators. And I
Am,
thought that
I-
was
am I am I in the paper?
so I don't actually list anybody specific because I'm not one of those people who is going to, dox anybody. But there's nothing to dox really in this paper. So the appropriate way to report is to anonymize. So I don't talk about specific content creators. But this is really where my interest started. Then there was Maya. And then, like I said, I wasn't interested in Karen Reed at all until I was. And then, so I saw a lot of emotions. And so every time there's a lot of emotions, I would even say sometimes outrage, I get interested as to why, right? So
Sure.
why is it why is it so interesting to people that they discuss it so much? And why there are so many people that are maybe angry, right? So I wanted to know. So this is what I really got into. So I had to study one at the beginning of trial two, or before the trial two, and during the trial two, it was open. And, I was studying some of those ideas that were being shared online in the communities. So, police conduct, just social media use in general, preference or not for content creators, and just sort of wanted to see how people perceive it. And then I had some other questions about the role of social media in justice system, which could be interesting to you because now we're hitting on constitution. Now I can't talk much about constitution because it's not my area, but I do have a co-author who can talk about it. So it's not just going to be everything from marketing perspective, but this whole idea of public access, and then also the idea of fair trial. And
Sure.
so I studied this, but I had an open comment section for people who participated, and I wanted to see what else people were interested in. And so I had so many comments there. I had 4,000 responses, and I read all the comments. And based on those comments, and then what was happening in the trial, and then what was happening in the online communities, I started to shaping the next study, the post-verdict study. So in the post-verdict study, of course, I look at social media consumption because it will always be my interest, right? And then how individuals, so people evaluate the prosecution, the defense team, the justice system in general, police in Canton, and yeah, I think that's most of it. So that's what the study is really about.
Okay, cool. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So basically, evaluating how all the what we call stimuli, so all that information affect people perceptions of these key concepts that are out there.
Very
So
interesting.
judicial
Yeah.
system, police.
I try to look at things like I try to look at things in the legal lens and try to look at things in the strict questions that are presented. And I also try to look at to the maximum extent I can, although it can get tricky at times, like trying to look at each issue unto itself. So, as a judge is presented with one motion versus another, I try to just evaluate each motion or each issue as a separate issue because that's how it's supposed to be done. And then I try to look for the things I can say that are good and bad about what's happening, so that I can try to keep as fair a lens as I can within things. So I try to look at um, everything, and I definitely from time to time have told my audience things they don't want to hear, and sometimes
Mhm.
that can be interesting, and sometimes I have to fight my own audience a little bit, but that can be challenging.
I mean, yeah, I've experienced this because I've been, stream hopping from different content creators to really understand the community, right? So I try not to comment too much, but sometimes I comment sort of unrelated stuff. But
No, we're
you
just being
know,
observed. We're just being observed from on high. We're the lab experiment.
um,
Work my little lab rats. Work
it's
for me.
really understanding. I find it fascinating. So I learned from the chat and everybody, um, because to me it's all massive learning experience. But I totally lost train of thought. I don't know how you
That's
keep up
fine.
with this because I see the comments. There was a question for me about objectivity.
You should be able to
Um,
close the comments. That you can probably hit the X
really?
on the chat thing. Yeah, you should
But
be able
they're
to close it.
interesting. I love. I mean, I love them. I keep them coming. I'll just
Are,
keep
are, are you
one eye.
implying they're more interesting than me?
No, never. I would never say such thing. There was a question about objectivity. I don't think that anybody is truly objective.
Yeah.
So we're getting into philosophical questions, and I think it's we need to talk about what affects our thought processes and our opinions. So whenever I hear, it's thrown around as an accusatory thing, like, "Oh, you're so biased." Well, that's okay. We all have biases, and the issue of biases is that we need to acknowledge them and be aware of our biases. Okay, so am I evaluating whatever I'm seeing through the lens of my biases, or can I just kind of check myself really quick and be like, okay, let me stand outside of my biases and try to evaluate it? So sometimes I constantly have to check myself and be like, okay, am I being biased, or am I viewing something for what it is? So I think we evaluate everything through the lens of our experiences and our knowledge. So I think, to answer your question about law tubers, I think they all evaluate, they have all perspectives that comes from their knowledge and their experience, and that affects how they view things. But if you do what I do, and I know many of you are doing this, you're stream hopping probably, especially if there's no court, everybody is hungry for information. So you're going to a different content creators, and you have different perspective. They can view things differently. But ultimately, what I saw in this case is that many law tubers have come to very similar conclusions. They may have disagreed on certain nuances of it, but
Sure.
there was a huge cohesive understanding of what might or might not be happening, and ultimately they'll pick their side. So are they truly objective? I don't think anybody is truly objective, right? That's why I have a survey. I don't just evaluate what people say, but I also have a survey where I can measure things and just have the numbers tell me. So,
Yeah, one thing that I make a point of noting is that bias is not the same thing as judgment, because
true.
this is very important. Like, because Lady Justice has scales in her hands, and if the scales are lopsided, it's not biased to say so, right?
Right.
If they're just skewed, then it's skewed. That's the
hmm
answer. So in that situation, trying to achieve neutrality would actually be bias, because you're just defying what the reality of the situation is. So trying to separate those two things is challenging, because just because you have a strong opinion doesn't necessarily mean it's biased. Just because the ump is calling a strike every time doesn't mean he's biased. Maybe it is a strike every time. Maybe he's just right. So
hmm
you don't know from the results that there was any corruption or bias in the process. You can't make that determination. So
Right.
that's fun too.
Yeah, I mean that we can have entire discussion, and like with academic papers, right? You ultimately come to a certain conclusion. Does it mean you're biased, or did you just form opinion, right? That's that's a very that sometimes becomes tricky. But yeah,
Yeah,
we have to
and
eventually come to conclusions, but it doesn't necessarily mean the bias, just the conclusion.
And then, of course, it gets really challenging, because if you want to try to get outside your own bias, that's really hard, because you're trying to evaluate your own bias from within your own lens. So it's like, how do I get out of the bias that created the bias in the first place? It's like turtles all the way down. So
Right.
there's only so much you can do.
So sometimes what we find useful, particularly in qualitative research, when the researcher becomes a tool of evaluating what is being said rather than quantitative research, we state our what's called positionality. So the
Mm.
position I come from. So you as a reader, you can evaluate yourself how I evaluate it from my perspective. So I think this has to do with transparency more than anything, because now you know where I come from, and I know you have strong views, and then you don't hide those views, right? So you tend to say, okay, these are my views, and so this is where I come from. So I think it's important to state those views, right? Now, because then a person can evaluate themselves if they err, if they take your opinions for as they are, or can they evaluate through from your position? Sorry.
Fair enough. So, what questions would you like to ask for me for your study about content creation, communities? How can I assist you?
Yes. So I did reach out to you. I've reached out to a number of people on both sides, because I do want to hear from both sides, right? I really want to actually, before I get there, I will say I want to hear from both sides. And people also who are not on any sides, who are just curious, right? And because the best way for me to evaluate the true dynamics is to be able to capture as many different opinions. There will be leaning one way or another. It's always the case, right? But I definitely want to encourage everybody. And so sometimes I do want to mention, when I ask a question about something, it doesn't mean that I have certain preference or that I am trying to bias my study. It's just difficult to ask question one way and then do the opposite, right? So there are questions where I'm asking about prosecution and defense. They are exactly the same questions because I actually do want to compare them. But then the others are sort of implied. You either agree or disagree, right? And so I'll just ask it sort of one way, and I'm going to hope, dzień dobry, I'm going to hope that you're going to agree or disagree, right? So that's where sort of attitudinal position comes from. Where does your attitude fall? But I
You,
have question asked.
you're going to ask me a yes or no question and actually expect to get an answer? Okay, let's give that a shot.
Actually, I don't ask typically yes or no questions. Typically, they're on a range because all attitudes range, right?
Well, if you're asking
Okay.
agree or disagree, that's a yes or no question.
It's strongly disagree to strongly agree.
Oh, okay. There's a range. It's
Yes.
just okay. All right, fair enough.
So it's a range of
fair enough.
agreement or disagreement.
Shades
and
of
somewhere
yes
in
and
the
no.
middle. Yes, shades. So to answer your question, I reached out because I am trying to get as many opinions as possible. So I need to reach people, but nobody follows a,
Well,
boring
you've come to the
academic.
you've come to the right source. I am the best source for information, opinions, and knowledge. So I am second to none. You've come to the right place.
So how about I ask you the question before I get to your question? What do you think was the role of social media in this, in the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed? What role did social media play?
The role of social media, I think, was impactful, if for no other reason than because, especially of Turtle Boy's work on this case, who was, I think, the prime mover on this and got a lot of people's attention. Where it went from there, is a whole other set of stories. But because of the case and its attention, Karen Reed was able to get the lawyers that she got because of the profile of the case. If this case had not gotten that attention, she almost certainly would not have gotten these lawyers. She just simply can't afford it. She ran out of money long ago, I'm quite sure. And so the fact that these lawyers got involved is at least because of the profile of these cases. These guys are extremely accomplished. They're making huge money, probably $2,000 an hour in some cases. They have a wide swath of cases. I mean, they're senior partners. They've been doing it for a long time. They work in LA. It gets expensive. They're probably doing, and so they pick these cases because of, the importance and profile of the case. And so, because if this case had not gotten the attention it wanted, I think that Karen Reed probably would have been convicted, just for if no other reason, she would have just been simply outclassed. She would have had a great lawyer, I'm sure, but she wouldn't have had this tier of lawyer, and she wouldn't have had 5 of them. So, that's the thing that comes first to mind. And because the other thing that social media had in the case was bringing to attention the problems of the things, which those problems were exposed in the trial itself. So just based on, especially the first trial and second trial, like you don't need to look at anything external. Like, and you can just look at the crucible of the courtroom, what was exposed in the courtroom relating to the police investigations, failures thereof, with evidence logs and collection techniques and all the rest of it. So because social media was looking, we could see what was happening. And the other thing it had was just the ability for us to be able to shoot ideas off of each other so that we could evaluate things, other things. So when I wanted to get another opinion on something, I could ask someone else who was informed. And so because they were watching it, we could have a very intelligent discussion. So it facilitated all those things. It led to a more well-informed population. If you want sort of the romantic answer to your question, because we're a government of the people, right? And the judicial system surely is a branch of government as much as anyone else. And we are therefore collectively the kings of the judicial branch because it's government of the people. We had the ability to monitor and evaluate whether or not our system of government was doing what we wanted to do. And to the extent it was falling short, we, the people, then have the appropriate political redresses. So all those good things.
Yeah. So I actually saw a question, how can I study American judicial system being from Poland? The good thing about it is
That's a dumb question.
I have co-authors, so they provide insights on the legal side of things. I study attitudes and how they affect. So good
Yeah.
co-authorships make everything better.
I mean, to some, I mean, that's just a different perspective. I don't know whether it's a better or different or a better perspective, but an outsider might be able in some situations to offer a better perspective. To the degree that the American system is foreign from Poland, that provides an additional insight. You then can say, oh, what do I think about the American system? Was it doing well? Was it not doing well? What do I like better about this system or that system? So yeah, I think it's a dumb question. That's like saying why should I have the right to evaluate the Polish system? Well, if I look at it, be like, oh, I don't like that. It's like, I should be allowed to have that opinion too. So that's
Well,
all
I'll
that's all
call it a
good.
valid question and worth responding, but we can agree on how we evaluate
I'm
the
gonna call I'm
question.
gonna call I'm gonna call it a stupid ignorant question.
I'm happy to answer any questions. So to answer, well, actually, there was a question about the 2020 interview. I did not see the 2020 interview yet, but I did see a snippet of it, and it talks something about quiet majority and loud minority. So I would like to encourage everybody who didn't feel like they could speak up to speak up through my survey. And if you're the loud majority, also please speak up so I can estimate and measure which one is loud, which one is quiet, how big the groups are, the magnitude of attitudes. So please participate. And so now I will answer your questions. How can you help me? Is to maybe encourage and let people know that the survey is live and running, and to take part in the survey. Nothing is perfect, but I tried my best to create a solid evaluation of what it was happening, at least from the community perspective.
Cool.
Do I need to? Will you provide link?
A link for what? To the survey? I think it's been
yeah.
provided already. I think
Okay.
I think people have been providing the link to the survey. But if not, I'm happy to provide it and put it as a pinned comment. So let me do that. I'll pin it as a pinned comment. Give me a second.
Jill.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, yeah, I think there's a need to take a look at many cases, and I think there's a positive side to social media because it can provide insights into various cases, and this one was picked up because of social media and what's his name? Turtle Boy. I'm sorry, I forgot. Yeah, Turtle Boy. So again, whether you like Turtle Boy or you don't like Turtle Boy, it's outside of the argument that I look at. I look more at, okay, how did you become aware of this case? And most people became aware of this case because of content creators, right? And so when you're saying that we need to look more at this, I want to encourage content creators to keep looking, right? And community to keep engaging, because if you don't engage, then the content creators will stop looking. But if you do engage, we will look in, well, I'm not a content creator, but content creators will look into it. And so perhaps provide, or shine some light on what is happening, because, I don't claim that there's justice or there's injustice. I want to evaluate how people evaluate it, right? So
yeah. I pinned your link and put it in the video description, so make sure to check
you.
that out and feel free to participate. So hopefully you can provide some interesting insights on your thoughts. So excellent. What else can I answer for you?
I'm actually interested really into, so you said something is calling. Is it calling you or calling me?
I don't hear anything.
Okay, good. So for me, it's interesting to see role of money, right? We want to say that justice system is just,
Hmm.
and well, I don't want to put myself, but would anybody out there without the social media um, look into it, or social media, or the case going viral on social media, would anybody have a chance to fight? And that's really outside of Karen Reed case. That's much bigger, right?
Sure. Well, I think money has always been part of the equation because, as I think I said, I don't know if I said in the pre-interview or not, but um, like when you think about the money's influence on anything, like you can stand on the street corner for free. If you want to distribute your message beyond that, money has always been implicated. Like when we talk about freedom of speech or freedom of press, like circa 1790, it's like, well, money is it. If you want to write pamphlets, the paper costs money, printers cost money, the ability to distribute those costs money, and quite a bit of money comparatively because the paper is more expensive comparatively. The machines are more expensive comparatively. The distribution methods are more expensive comparatively. If those costs have gone down, and to the extent that money is an influence for content creators on what they cover, this is not a new problem. Money has always been an issue. The newspaper needs to be able to get circulation. They need to be able to distribute their papers because it costs money. So it's like we got to get money so we can print the thing and distribute it. So like mainstream media or traditional media is no less influenced by media or by money, and arguably more influenced by money because their obligations are bigger. Because traditionally, we need lots of printing presses, we need huge studios, and all the rest of it. Um, to the extent that that's a factor, it's less a factor for content creators because someone like me, the cost of running this channel is basically zero at this point.
Hmm.
There's been some expenses that are incurred, and but the ongoing expenses are comparatively minimal. um and then people in social media, generally speaking, if you're talking about just like forums and Reddit threads and stuff like that, people aren't talking, just Twitter generally, they're not talking to get paid. People are just talking because they like to talk. So money is no less a fact. Money is no more a factor. It's arguably much less a factor, and because of the amount of people that can also participate for free. Like if you want to participate, in a broadcast sense, again, like if we're going back even 20 years, if you want to participate in a broadcast sense, like you're going to have a problem because how are you paying for the ability to buy the broadcast media? The internet and social media in particular has made it possible for people to do it for free, and so they do. So, um, I think money is um, not as corrupting an influence as sometimes people have this idea it is. I think
Mm.
about this in terms of elections in particular because people are like, "We need to get money out of elections." I'm like, money was always elections. Money was always involved in elections. They were buying ink by the barrel. That was the money then. The money was being
Mhm.
spent by a few. Now the money's just being spent by masses. So
Mhm.
I mean, it's more democratized. So that's good, probably.
Yeah, I saw a comment here that ability to defend yourself should not depend on your ability to go viral or something like that. I'm sorry, I saw it. Or attention on social media, and I do agree, but this part becomes beyond beyond my expertise, right? But it's definitely a valid point. All right, well, social media, I big fan. There is a dark side. I've heard of the dark side of, especially in this case, right? There was a lot of discussion, not always civil, and that's again not for me to judge, but this discussion, the two-sided argument has contributed to the attraction of this of this particular case, right? Plus, then we're looking at other dynamics that, I'm still studying, so I'll be happy to report on those evaluations of, these various variables that I'm studying: prosecution, defense, Karen Reed, the case itself, judicial system. So I'm definitely excited to see what the results are going to be. But I do agree that social media did play a role, not so much in the juror room, at least as far as I
Yeah.
know. I think we just heard about the juror. I watched it, and
People forget some of the older cases. Like I forget there was the case of what I always forget his name, the doctor from like the 60s. His name was it was the case which the movie The Fugitive and the TV show The Fugitive was supposedly based off of. The producers denied it. But I always forget the guy's name. Um God, I can't remember every time, but he was a doctor accused of murdering his wife. And this is how absurd it got. The media was taking pictures of the jurors like while the case was ongoing. And they published photos of, and now the zeitgeist around this was like, it was kind of like the OJ of its time. Everyone thought he was super guilty. Everyone thought the doctor did it. They were basically 2 steps away from lynching him at best. Okay. So that was the zeitgeist of the thing. The media went in, they took pictures of the jurors, they published those photos along with like their names, where they worked, where they lived. This is a juror. And by the way, just to let you know, they're on the case, and all the rest of it. They were trying to do interviews of the jurors during the case, not after the case, during the case, confronting them in the hallway and asking them questions. That's how absurd it got. And the US Supreme Court eventually said, what, we think this is a problem. We think that maybe this might have potentially led to an unfair jury. So the whole thing was the whole thing was a lot of, it was Shepard. Yeah, Shepard was the name of the case if you want to look it up. It was a whole nightmare fuel. So like if you want to talk about media's influence on juries, like that is the most extreme version of it. And fortunately, well, the media has mostly learned its lesson, although from time to time you still hear them doing stupid stuff, like trying to chase down the jury bus or something, and then like people freaking out because of this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Steve, yeah, I mean, in part, that's what I was also asking. Some of the previous study look at the donations, who donated to the case. I was looking at that too. That actually social media can play now an interesting role in contributing to defense, right? To the defense of somebody who's accused, because we know that there was a fund, and that fund, defense fund, was greatly fueled by social media, right? So I thought that was interesting too. Yeah, I find it fascinating again because people collectively gather, and then what leads to that form of, I guess, legal activism. I don't know what would be the right word here.
But lynch mobs are nothing new, not even in like their more dark like racial context, just like people getting passionate, over passionate, and just all the rest of it. I mean, executions used to be much more public. It was fun for the whole family. Everyone came down to the execution, man. It was basically a carnival atmosphere in some places, So like
Mhm.
the social desire for uh catharsis at, I suppose, the most extreme level is not a new phenomena either, you know. So
Mhm. Yeah.
humans are dark sometimes when you look at history. Like humans are dark. We've
Yes,
we've 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 done dark things.
we have. And part of my research is a little bit darker too. I do study some of the deception, manipulation, not in this context, but I do study those too. And it's a little, I need to take time to myself to kind of cope, right? Because, it's interesting. We see all this, and it can get little, we can start thinking all sorts of things, right? Oh, is it going to happen to me? Right? And the perception of likelihood that it might happen increases. And again, I'm not talking specifically about Karen Reed case, but just in general, when we heavily expose ourselves to sort of darker topics.
What was interesting about Karen Reed is was like kind of an anti-lynch mob, which you don't really see that. Like, because you saw the photos outside the courtroom, it was just swath, it was a big swath of pink. Everyone, I mean, basically everyone, it seemed, was there cheering for Karen Reed. There was
Hmm.
no, normally, in this kind of case, you would think, cop is dead, someone was murdered, they're calling for her head. They're doing
Hmm.
like basically literally the opposite of it. So it's like
Hmm.
an anti-lynch mob. So I'm not sure what that is, but that's an interesting phenomenon.
There's a question: what's wrong with the collective thinking of injustice and contributing to funds against it? Nothing. I'm just trying to understand it. So I actually think that uh, the role. This is not the dark side. This is the brighter side. So if you think somebody is being there's some injustice happening, just in general terms, right? If there's injustice happening, and if you have ability and willingness to help, I think that is the bright side of social media, that you hear about it and you share about it. You can contribute to stopping to it, like donating, or you know asking others to donate, having the message go viral. There is I don't think there's anything wrong with it. In fact, I think there's something good with this, right? So I just
Hmm.
want to clarify that this is my position. If you think there's injustice happening, I think having the ability, because you can't change, like many people all around the world, because it was a global case at this point, they
Mm.
were following the case. There's nothing they can do, but they want to help. They can't vote because they're far away. They're not local, so they have no impact on the local government, but they wanted to donate to help that way. And so I think the ability to have that outlet, I think it's a good thing. And again, speaking of broader societal impact, right? So if we look at the ability to help, I think that's a good thing. And I think this is where social media is going right now, with the interest in criminal, or well, mostly criminal justice.
Yeah. And, because we're, a government of the people, then we have a sort of fundamental legitimate interest in whether our institutions are working or not. Because, we're all collectively in charge of this government. And
Yeah.
so that's an interesting aspect to it too. It's like there's a very legitimate function to be had, although that legitimate function is slightly more tempered, I guess, because that way we don't try to go too off the rails either way about anything. I think that's interesting about law in general, because law in general, at least historically, has been very small c conservative. We are very like cautious, and we're very sort of move somewhat slowly because we want to think things through, because
Hmm.
we don't want to screw things up. Like one of the most I've said this before, like one of the most dangerous concepts like you'll hear is like, but this one time though, right?
Right.
That's the really dangerous thing. Like it's like you hear the judge, it's like, well, but this one time though, this case just demands, but just this one time though. And that's the part where I start freaking out, because I'm like, it never ends that way. It never ends that way. Just this one time is a lie. It will not end. You're fooling yourself. Don't lay down the brick. Other bricks will be laid down based on where you lay it down. It doesn't end well. So we try to make things more cautious so we don't do the stupid.
Yeah. Ed, I see your comment about the survey is like signing off on a mortgage. It is, it is a hefty 10 minutes. But you all have a lot of opinions, okay? And I try to capture them. Many of these questions come from the previous survey, and just ask this, just ask
You
this.
guys can't even do a survey. You guys aren't capable of doing a survey. You guys are foolish for even thinking that you would want to do a survey. This survey isn't for you. How's my reverse psychology going? Is it doing okay?
Interesting.
All right, yeah, all right.
Interesting is saying she sounds so sus of us people that enjoy listening to trials and law. No, not at all. I've been glued to content creators and listening to trials myself. Like I said, it really started with
No,
Debbie Heard,
I totally
Maya.
understand. I totally understand it. I get it. It's like, what the hell is going on is a perfectly legitimate question. Social media is a new phenomenon, and its interactions with trials is a new phenomenon. Now, how new it is and in what ways is it new, if at all, I think it's an interesting exploration, because as I've sort of been positing, I think in a lot of ways it's not particularly new. I think the phenomena are kind of the same, and social media just perhaps makes it more apparent. But I think the phenomena are the same as if we went back 500 years ago and we got town criers yelling the latest about the what's happening at the trial. I think it's kind of the same phenomena, fundamentally. But I think asking what is going on and what is this good, is it bad, or what it is, I think it's perfectly legitimate academic study. I got it. Sounds
Yeah,
great to me.
yeah, it's very interesting. And then again, there was Maya. I watched every bit of it and I contemplated a study, but I just
Don't let
ran
the
out
haters
of.
get to you. Don't let the haters get to you. There are going to be haters. There are always going to be haters. Don't let the negative comments get to you.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
continue pursuing it and tell them to stuff it. That's what I do.
I was scared jumping on here live. I was like, oh no, somebody's gonna clip something and it's not gonna be good. It's gonna be viral and oh my gosh. But hopefully so far every comment I saw was nice. And if there was any misunderstanding, I think I caught them. But it's very hard to keep track of the chat. But hi chat. I'm also down there with you.
Yeah. I guess lab animals are also fighting back a little, but that's okay. We can make it work.
Well, social media is not new. That's true. Social media is not new. It's been around, but it is to me still interesting and will continue to be interesting for as long as we are using it
Oh
for
no, I
good
think it's
and bad.
I mean, depending on your time frames, I mean, that's an interesting question when you're saying whether something's new or not. But like, depending on your time frames, like social media was invented yesterday.
Right.
Like, it's pretty new. I mean, it's I think you could realistically, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could pin it down to, but the advent of the iPhone is as good a line demarcation as any. So, I mean, it's not even a generation old yet. We don't really understand what this is and how it impacts things. We don't really understand what it is.
Yeah, I
It's even
remember I was in college and really everybody started being on Facebook, and I'm like, "Ah, I don't want to be on this. I mean, what's the point of this whole thing?" And now I study it, which is funny. But yeah. Where do I find survey? Greg, I think it's
it should be
pinned.
pinned. It should be pinned in the comments in the comment of the video. It should be both places. If you can't find it, you're not looking, man.
Oh,
Use
you
your
can
eye
find it
parts.
on X.
You see
Oh,
these
yeah,
things
good.
right here. These eye parts. Yeah, it's on the YouTube. It's a pinned YouTube comment. So look for it
Thanks,
there.
Jinx. Jinx, am I saying it right? And for your nice comments and for link again. But yeah, I think there's so much interest, and for me, as a mostly social media researcher, I have done so many, I think, interesting studies that again don't seem to relate. But like, I want to know what drives people to do things, what drives their interest, what shapes their attitudes, and so um, I studied, like I said, number of topics. I did Deb V. Heard and how attitudes shifted, how his reputation shifted, right? From
Hmm.
sort of being canceled to the opposite. Um, and then, like I said, I look at Maya, and I've studied other things, like, which was interesting, how small businesses were treated in during COVID times, and how suppliers took advantage of them, which has led to rising prices. Ultimately, I estimated that effect. And it all stemmed from community talk, right? And so hopefully, this community talk is going to let us see things that otherwise would not be seen. So I definitely want to encourage discussion, right? I'm a big fan of discussion because it helps us better understand what is happening and potential pain, right? Our pain, like not physical pain, but what bothers us. If we don't study it, if we don't look into it, we're just engaging in, I don't know, creating laws that don't affect people. We really need to see what affects people before we have policies. And I mean, laws takes forever, but any sort of policy, right? If
Sure.
it's to
Yeah.
affect us, somebody has to look at what bothers us, right? So we solve those problems, and really that's marketing, because the whole idea of marketing is to determine, okay, what are the needs of our consumers, and are we meeting their needs? Are we satisfying their needs? So are our needs met as consumers, citizens, whatever that may be, right? So
The
if we're
consumer
not
doesn't
doing
know
right,
what they want. As Steve Jobs would say, the consumer doesn't know what they want.
sometimes they don't. Sometimes they. So that's actually interesting because sometimes what we say we want and what we actually do want are different things. But sometimes what we say we want is a symptom of something bigger, right? Of telling us what we really want. So it's fun.
I could walk through the survey as I just do it and just give the answers that way if you like.
Travis, I have no answer yet to your question about attributes of low tuber
Let's do it.
viewers.
Let's do the survey together. That sounds fun. I'll
No,
do it. I'll do
no,
it
no,
that
no,
way.
no, no, no. Please don't do it. You're going to bias. Oh my gosh, please don't do it. Don't do it together because you're going to bias my.
By giving the answers that I gave?
So people are going to see, and then people are going to talk about it while it's happening, and this is what's going to affect attitude. Remember, we talked about this. Please no. So no posting on screenshots and comments about whatever. Please don't. Just take it in your own time, on your own. Don't discuss it. Just let me collect data. With your true opinion and thoughts. Thank you very
Sorry, my
much.
bad. My fault.
But it's a valid point. I mean, it would be great for content, but I would be mortified because it would invalidate the whole study. You just give me a heart attack. Oh my
That's all
god.
right. I'm not here to ruin your day. I'm trying to be helpful.
No, I appreciate it. All right. I mean, does anybody have any other questions? Because my kid is about to run out of his reading time, and he will be knocking on my door in a second. Sabotage. Yeah, that would be sabotage of my study. That and you have. Yet here you are. Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't don't skew her data. That's right. So please, everybody, I really appreciate your thoughts um, in the survey. And there's also, if you feel like I didn't capture something, and I'm sure I didn't, because it's impossible. So like already, like somebody said, signing off a mortgage. It is, solid 10 minutes. So, but there's at the end, there's a box, so you can put whatever you want in there as much as you want, and I will analyze all that data and I will read
Ooh.
every comment. So please do. And also, because of last study, you all asked me if I could notify you about the results. I have provided you with the ability to provide your email address, which will be separated from your answers, and I can email you the results. And I will definitely, but you don't have to do that. I will definitely share on social media, or maybe I can come back to Kurt and we can discuss the study results once it's over. So
That'd be
then
fun.
we can learn together of what we find.
That'd be fun. All right. Well, thank you for joining me. And everyone, take a look at the pinned comment and complete the survey, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank
Thanks for
you so
joining me.
much. I appreciate. Bye.
All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
chat.
All right, well, chat. Well, that was fun and exciting. I hope you had a fun and exciting too. It's interesting to see how different people view things, and trying to understand the sociological phenomena behind social media is interesting because, like, it is new, and the interconnectedness of social media is obviously interesting, and how it affects the human condition. Because, like, human beings as creatures grew up. Well, this is sort of the one of the conceits that we grew up in roughly societies of about 150, right? That's roughly like tribal society for most of history, is like this idea that we grew up in societies of about 150. And so, for most of human history. And so, things beyond that are, much wider, groups beyond that are much wider, and how these dynamics play is interesting. And social media now allows us the ability to connect across the world instantly and share information instantly across the world, which is amazing. Like, the barrier to entry is so low, right? And it basically everyone has this technology now, essentially, because the barrier to entry is so low, and it's getting cheaper all the time for people to just be able to participate, and for people to be able to reach everyone. So, like, how that works in these kind of dynamics, how that works with information spread, what information is available to what communities, how communities form, how communities are isolated or not thereof doesn't make it more does it make us more isolated because we're able to silo ourselves, because we're if you are in some domain, whether it's interest or uh, character traits or whatever, if you're 1 out of 10,000, right, in a pre-internet era, you'll never find that person, but the internet allows you to find those people all the time because 1 out of 10,000, there's so many people that you can form communities based on anything, right? The crock pot now has a community, no matter what that crock pot is. Whether or not I am the crock pot, we will leave to another discussion. But in any event, it creates these abilities. So how it influences how information spread. The other thing that's of course really interesting is that there's so much information, which kind of goes both ways, right? Some people have said to me, for example, that they don't really think we can have fair trials because of media. And I'm like, I think you're kind of looking at this the wrong way, right? There is so much information, but there's so much information, right? The good is the bad. It is exactly it is the benefit and the problem, right? There is so much to pay attention to, but there's so much to pay attention to, right? It's like, so finding people who are not aware of something is maybe even easier than it used to be. That's possible, right? Like, because if the local media, or if your local media used to cover a story, right, then that would be known to the entire community. If your paper picked up a story, that'd be known to the community. But so those would be the stories you would know. But now anyone can add to the story, and so there's so much noise that it's very credible that, like, what you choose to pay attention to is a whole side problem. It's actually really interesting from first principles, because how do people decide what information to pay attention to? There's so much information that it is not possible to pay attention to everything. It's completely overwhelming. So, like, how do you decide what to pay attention to and what don't you decide to pay attention to? These are all really interesting phenomena. And then specifically, how that impacts trials. How does that impact justice? Does it make justice easier or harder? Does it make the population more well informed? Does it make them more knowledgeable? Maybe that's helpful. Does it taint them by giving information they shouldn't have? Maybe that's less helpful. Right? So how these dynamics play into things, right, is unknown. And like social media, like you draw the line at different points. But the advent of the smartphone, I think the advent of the iPhone, because the advent of the smartphone, I think is a reasonable place to say, right? The advent of the iPhone as being basically the line demarcation seems like a reasonable place to draw the line, because everyone has this device in their pocket that allows them to communicate their thoughts from everywhere instantly, right? Social media to some extent predates the smartphone, but when it did, you had to like be at a computer, and now you don't, because the computer's with you all the time. And so and it also means the barrier to publish is now much less, because before, if you weren't by your computer, you had to get there. So you had to actually like turn on your computer or whatever, and that was some barrier to entry, right? So that might prevent you from saying something because you might think about it in the interim. Now there's basically no barrier to entry. You can provide your thoughts as they're happening in real time. You can just open the thing and instantly tweet. There's no delay. So that allows for a much more stream of consciousness like expression. How does that influence things? These are all like very interesting things to me. And then the degree to which that's different than it used to be. Right. Again, I sort of go back to the sort of medieval Europe example, because I think it's an interesting example. Like, when people, are just living in a community, they've lived there their whole lives. They're going to live and die there, as well as, their parents and parents' parents and children's children, are going to live and die there. They probably never left their community because they have no ability to travel, right? They have no money. They can't read. Literacy hasn't been invented yet. Even if the book has been invented, literacy hasn't been invented yet. So they can't read. And so what do? And courts are free. So it becomes the entertainment, it becomes the thing of the talk of the town. The social phenomena the social phenomena of the insular community becomes a little thing. It's a whole thing. So like all these aspects are really interesting to me. And of course, things are only getting worse or different. We are speeding along, right? We moved from the radio to the television to the internet to social media, and we are moving along into an more and more interconnected world with fewer and fewer barriers to entry. And what interfaces will we have in the future that make them even easier? I mean, for example, the smartwatch is one such example, not as revolutionary, but it makes the barriers to entry even easier, right? So what barriers, what devices and what interfaces will be invented in the future that make it even easier? How will the interconnectivity change in the future? How will this change things? What does this do for justice? What does this do for society? And so forth and so on. There's a lot that's very interesting there. And so I applaud her study because she's trying to through one exemplar, she's trying through one exemplar, trying to figure out a little piece of what the hell is going on. Right? It's like, what the hell is going on? And maybe I can try to study this little piece of it, and maybe that'll give me some clues about what's happening. So I think it's really cool, man. And I think it's all really cool. So I really enjoyed our discussion. There was an interview with Turtle Boy, apparently. We watched the jury interview earlier, by the way. It was very good. The juror understood the assignment, and I'm happy that he did. He said mostly the right words. All right, there's an interview apparently with Aiden on Hot Mics with Billy. Let's watch that together. That sounds fun. Let's watch that. All right, so how do I do this? That's actually a good question. Can I do this? I don't know. Let's find out. I might have to like join my own stream, and then I might have to do this in a very janky way, but I can make it work one way or another. I have the technology. I just might make it. It might be a little jank. That's all right. Not the first time. Yeah, I'm gonna have to join my own stream. That's all right. That's fine. We can do it the hard way. Yes, we saw the TMZ interview. It was very, very good. He understood the assignment. It was great. Okay. If I hold on. If I do this. All right, cool. It didn't break everything. Excellent. Very good. That actually worked. Very good. All right, fantastic. All right, let's do this. Let's do this interview with Aiden.
And the reason is him. So if we can bring up Aiden, I'll take him at any minute. Aiden Carney, a.k.a. Turtle Boy. The guy took it. Oh, there he is in his car. We got everybody on them. Hey, buddy, how are you feeling right now?
You're on top of the world, man. This is the greatest feeling ever. I'm just soaking it all in. My phone's blowing up, as you can imagine. Just feel vindicated, Billy. Feel vindicated.
I mean, it's a great. There's so many things here, but one of the macro issues that I think about is like the internet and how incredible it is in connecting people with, in this case, a sense of justice. You started this whole thing. You saw an injustice occurring and you got this thing going, started making noise, started telling people to come down. You built that crowd out there. It must feel pretty amazing to know that you can mobilize people like that.
Terrifying.
It was pretty cool. I didn't think I'd ever do anything like this. I used to be a high school teacher. I never thought I'd be here, 10 years later doing this. But yeah, walking out of that courthouse today and just having a crowd chant Turtle Boy, it was just like thousands of people. And it was the most surreal and amazing experience I've ever been part of.
Tell me about your words with Karen Reed after the verdict was read and the legal team.
There's no words yet. I missed Alan Jackson called me when I was talking. I've been doing all sorts of interviews. Alan Jackson called me in the middle of it. I called him back and I haven't been able to reach him. But I'm gonna see what they're doing tonight. I'd like to think that we need to celebrate. You know,
The waterfall. Maybe the waterfall.
But like yeah, no, I can't. Chris Albert has a 100-yard stay away order on me, so I can't go anywhere near him. So we're gonna stay away from Canton. But you know, I'm in Boston tonight, so I'll be. I think their hotel is somewhat near us, so maybe we'll do that. But yeah, it was just in the courtroom. I did kind of like communicate with Karen, like, you know, with our eyes. Like, it's just, she was scared, man. There was no other way to describe it. She looked frightened. Alan Jackson looked frightened. He was pacing in that courtroom before the O'Keefes got there, puffing and puffing, and he looked scared. And I've never seen him like that before. And it was just the most tense environment I've ever been a part of. And then to hear not guilty, like everything in you wants to erupt and just cheer. And you're in the courtroom as a reporter and you can't. You got to, you know. So I almost cried, man. Like, if you see that, I don't know if it's on video at all in the courtroom. Like, I was literally crying. And I'm like, there was no, and then they whisk you out of there. So I didn't even get a chance to like say, you know, hug the Reed family or anything like that. They just whisk you out of there. And then, you know, I hugged Karen briefly on the way out when she was, but it was just a mob scene, you know, so looking forward to seeing them soon.
Oh my God! What do you think is next for Karen? I mean, I want her to recoup some money. I've been saying I want her to go and make you know, the Good Morning America pay her $10 million to talk or something. She deserves. She hadn't been able to work.
Yeah,
Right?
you know, I don't know what her next plan is to make money, but I would assume she's gonna have no shortage of book opportunities, movie deals. I mean, I just announced right after this movie was over, it was announced that, you know, I've signed a movie deal. My rights have been signed by a motion picture company called Compelling Pictures, who is doing a documentary on me as well. And so, you know, now it's time to do the victory tour. Now it's time to soak it all in. And, you know, she might not never sue the state or get anything from them, but there are ways to recoup your losses, you know, by monetizing what you've been through. And she deserves it, Billy. She deserves it.
I think so too. You know, and what about the next step within the state? I mean, there's obviously great suspicion amongst people that live in Massachusetts about law enforcement, the judicial system. People are suspect. They want things to change. They think that you know, the thin blue line is too tight, and something's got to happen. So, I mean, some people are talking about, do the feds come in? Do they investigate? Is there anything that you'll be calling for?
I mean, I'll be calling for the feds to investigate, but I won't hold my breath if they don't. You know, I don't think they really answer to, you know, journalists. But, you know, and they also work in the dark, you know, like you don't know what they're doing. They don't announce what they're doing. They've claimed that their investigation is over. I hope that's not true. But if it is what it is, and there's not much we can do about it. In the meantime, sacrificing an innocent person and putting them in jail isn't going to get any justice for John. And about the police, you know, one cop has been fired, Michael Proctor, but all these other bad guys are still on the job. You know, Brian Tully and Yuri Buchanan were down there today. They were in the courthouse, and they were seen lurking outside afterwards. Hank Brennan is too gutless to show his face afterwards. He still hasn't released a statement. He's a coward. He took $1 million in taxpayer money when it's all said and done and lost. He couldn't even get a tie. He couldn't even get a mistrial like Adam Lally could get. So he's just too gutless. And they didn't even push for a sentencing. Like, he could have asked for 2.5 years if he wanted to, but that would require coming back and showing your face again in that courtroom. And he's such a gutless coward that he couldn't even do that. And he offered a year probation and the defense took it.
Wow. Wow. What about Michael Morrissey? What about Governor?
Man, I mean, he Aiden really doesn't want to give Brennan a break, does he, man? I mean, I tend to agree with, I forget who said it first, but I tend to agree that at least in that moment, Brennan did the right thing. We've discussed this, right? He wasn't really able to use any of the he wasn't able, as a matter of state law, to use any facts for which he had been acquitted. So the only facts that he would be able to use would be facts from the convicted charge, and like he might be able to bring in some other stuff, but yeah, he gave her the bog standard DUI conviction. Like, he just gave her the, you know, the number one special. That's the same one that everyone else gets. And he's like, that was the right thing to do. That was the right thing to do. So Aiden doesn't want to give the man a break, man. Jeez. I mean, they say you should never punish someone when they're doing the right thing. Right. So I think he was doing the right thing in that moment, and like criticizing him, you're like kind of punishing him a little bit. It's like, man, he did the right thing. Give the man a break. You can criticize him for other things, man. I'm not saying don't criticize him for other things, but in that moment, he did the right thing, man. I'm happy he did. Awesome.
Governor Maura Healey, doesn't she have a responsibility to say something right now? At least address this and face have a press conference and take questions?
Yeah, she should have said something a long time ago. She released one statement after Michael Proctor's text got out, but that's all she said. What are we going to do about this rot in the Massachusetts State Police that enabled this? If you ask, I got a buddy who's a good friend who's a state trooper, and he knows Karen Reed's innocent. And he said that, on the job, he goes, most state troopers think she's guilty, most. And that's just unacceptable. Like,
really?
I don't want to be policed by anybody who is that stupid, who is just that dumb. I mean, 12 jurors just sat through 3 months of testimony, and 4 doctors said John O'Keefe wasn't hit by a car, period. If you're dumb enough to think that Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe, you shouldn't be police. You shouldn't be allowed to investigate others. You're just not qualified for the job. It's like a doctor that doesn't know how to do a surgery, or doesn't wash their hands. It's like you're too incompetent to do this job. You can't see what's right in front of you.
Talking to Turtle Boy right now, Aidan Carney is a man who mobilized the citizenry in support of Karen Reed, and a great victory for her today. And obviously,
also, by the way, Aiden, you're looking good, man. Just have to say, you're looking good. Whatever you're doing in terms of your personal, physique and stuff, man, looking good, sir.
For you, I think there's a civil trial that is still in front of Karen. What do you think? Are they going to any chances of that gets dropped given what just happened?
Oh no,
that's going to get settled. So that the insurance company, Karen's not even paying for that. Her attorneys are paid for by her insurance company. They'll pay for you if you get sued for stuff like that. And these insurance companies, they are incentivized to just settle. So because it's cheaper to settle a lawsuit than it is to continue to pay a team of lawyers to fight it. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some sort of NDA and they gave them $50,000 to go away under the table or something like that. That's the most they're going to get out of that. Karen Reed won't pay a penny.
Got to say, some of the best remarks I heard were from Bill.
I don't know that that's true. I think they're probably going to take it to the wall. I don't think that's true, Aiden. I think they're going to take it to the wall. Just so they can run her through the process some more. Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Bill Reed, Karen's father, outside. He walks down the court. He grabs the microphone and he delivers a very eloquent, gracious speech of gratitude about that legal team. I will say that legal team, that a family has formed here. I've seen some videos of Alan, cooking dinner for everybody, but they really came together in something very, very unique. But the legal team is really great. That Bob Alessi has a bright future, man, and Yannetti, and they're all accomplished already. But boy, I thought Bill Reed was really eloquent when he acknowledged
they love that. Yeah, they love that. They love that woman. She's more than just a client to them. She's a friend. Her and Elizabeth Little are very close friends. And if God forbid something had happened, or they would have been devastated, personally devastated. Like, they've seen clients of theirs go to jail all the time, and nothing would have hurt like the sting of Karen Reed going to jail. So I'm sure they're so excited, and they'll be bonded together forever for the fine work that they've done in exonerating this innocent woman.
Did you think this was going to happen?
Yes, I mean, I did. When he said not guilty, I was not surprised at all. Based on the questions that the jurors were asking yesterday, it was pretty obvious that was the way that they were leaning, and just the amazing defense that was put on. You knew that there's no way they can ever convict this woman. So the worst case, mistrial. Best case, acquittal, and that's what ended up happening. So I wasn't surprised at all.
I don't know, Travis. I don't know that they're going to settle for limits. I don't know, ma'am. I don't know, man. I think they want to take it to the wall. I think they want to take it to the wall just to make this woman suffer some more and all the rest of it. I think, yeah, I don't know, ma'am. I don't know if they're going to sell for limits. There's a lot of vitriol over there. I don't know. Maybe you're right, but I wouldn't bet on it.
When I heard that.
Turtle Boy, I really appreciate your time. Aiden Carney right there. He is driving home with a big smile across his face. You know, you look like, you know, if you, I think you could be a good actor.
Settling for limits implies that what I want is money. I'm not sure that's necessarily their primary goal at this point. It's still depressing.
So we're talking about the Karen Reed movie. You know, I've been talking about streaming this morning. I think you play yourself. I think you've got some chops. I don't think anybody can play Turtle Boy. Somebody suggested
I'll play Turtle Boy. I'll play Turtle Boy. It'll be great.
I play Turtle Boy. I said, what are you talking about? Turtle Boy plays Turtle Boy. He doesn't need any.
I like it. I like the way you're thinking, man. I like the way you're thinking. I'll tell Compelling that. See what they say.
What do you think of Amy Schumer as Judge Beverly?
That could work. That could definitely work. I could totally see that.
Olivia
She's only young
Wilde.
for the role.
Olivia Wilde is Karen Reed.
I think Margot Robbie would be a good Karen Reed.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I could see that one too. Yeah.
yeah. What about who plays Alan Jackson? I got Ben Affleck, or is he too tall?
A little tall. I'd have to think about that one. But maybe make Mark Ruffalo. But anyway, I got to go.
I want a part in the movie. Can I be an extra or something? I want a part.
I got Howie Carr on the other line.
Oh,
But thanks for having me, though.
give Howie my love. I love Howie Carr, one of the great radio personalities in this in the country. Rocks Boston.
Yeah, will do. All right, I'll
Tell
talk to
Howie
you.
I said hi. All right.
Well, that was a fun interview. I enjoyed that. I look forward to doing more interviews. Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off and just sit at my desk and just probably just sit here and like chill because it's Ninja Turtle costume may well do a Ninja Turtle costume. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. This has been fun. We'll be on some other point with something. Discord remains the best way to share things. If you see more interviews in particular, also, by the way, if you are a juror and would like to, discuss it with me, I'd love to discuss it with you. I'd love to get more insight about the process and a little bit more detail. No super chats. Were there super chats today? Let's find out. Bump, 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 bump. Da, 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 bum, bum, bum. Do, 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 do. All right, Marie Z gave 10 gift memberships. Ruby for $19.99 said Trial by Media, a great documentary about the very first trial that was live broadcast on TV. Huge audience, massive social reaction of people, riots in the streets. Fascinating parallels to Karen Reed, also Massachusetts. Very cool. Sounds like a fun book. Kim for $5 said, our justice system omits too much to be fair. Social media gives us the entire story. Fair enough. I do appreciate those super chats. Thank you very much. All right. I've been on Civil Law. Until later, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers for now, my friends.